But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there not also a prophet of the Lord here? We should ask him the same question." The king of Israel replied to Jehoshaphat, "There is one more man who could consult the Lord for us, but I hate him. He never prophesies anything but trouble for me. His name is Micaiah, son of Imlah." Jehoshaphat replied, "That's not the way a king should talk. Let's hear what he has to say." So the king of Israel called one of his officials and said, "Quick, bring Micaiah, son of Imlah." Jehoshaphat, being dedicated to the Lord specifically, wanted to make sure he heard from a prophet of the Lord, so he could get insight from the Lord on the situation. The king of Israel, Ahab, not being dedicated to the Lord, of course the Lord's prophet would have a bunch of negative things to say about a king that doesn't follow the Lord. Like, that shouldn't really be a surprise. But King Ahab doesn't like him because of that fact. Kind of your own fault there, Ahab. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. So, now we're looking at 2 Chronicles 18. Last chapter, Jehoshaphat became king after his father, King Asa, died off. And he was dedicated to the Lord, helped the people be more dedicated to the Lord, tore down idols and stuff, and possibly related to that, God made it so that the kingdoms and people around them were afraid to attack Judah, which then gave Jehoshaphat more time and ability to fortify cities, recruit more soldiers for the army maybe, or otherwise just, be more prepared for any future battles that might come. Not too much else to say about that. It is pretty clear at this point that that 2 Chronicles is specifically following the kingdom of Judah. Benjamin's also there, but I guess the kingdom got named more so after the tribe of Judah because it was the larger tribe, honestly. Or probably. Judah might have also been the firstborn son, come to think of it. Not totally sure on that one, though. Anywho, tangent. But yeah, so 2 Chronicles is tracking the kingdom of Judah, not also the split kingdom of the rest of the tribes of Israel. So, more on Jehoshaphat in this chapter. So here we go. Jehoshaphat enjoyed great riches and high esteem, and he made an alliance with Ahab of Israel by having his son marry Ahab's daughter. A few years later, he went to Samaria to visit Ahab, who prepared a great banquet for him and his officials. They butchered great numbers of sheep, goats, and cattle for the feast. Then Ahab enticed Jehoshaphat to join forces with him to recover Ramoth-Gilead. "Will you go with me to Ramoth-Gilead?" King Ahab of Israel asked King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Jehoshaphat replied, "Why, of course. You and I are as one, and my troops are your troops. We will certainly join you in battle." Then Jehoshaphat added, "But first, let's find out what the Lord says." Now, I noted this back in 1st or maybe 2nd Kings whenever it appeared earlier in the Bible. But before they do anything, Jehoshaphat's like, wait, let me seek God on this to make sure, because, his dedication to the Lord is solid enough that before such a big decision or action, he wants to know the Lord's will in the matter. But also, I can totally see the whole alliance of Jehoshaphat and Ahab and the marriage of their children possibly causing some issues for Judah later on. You know, his son might be led away from worshiping the Lord because of Ahab's daughter, and anyway, we'll see if it even mentions any of that. Otherwise, I won't spend too much time on that. So, Jehoshaphat wants to see what the Lord says about going to recover Ramoth Gilead, as it's phrased here. Then, verse 5. So the king of Israel summoned the prophets, 400 of them, and asked them, "Should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should I hold back?" They all replied, "Yes, go right ahead. God will give the king victory." But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there not also a prophet of the Lord here? We should ask him the same question." The king of Israel replied to Jehoshaphat, "There is one more man who could consult the Lord for us, but I hate him. He never prophesies anything but trouble for me. His name is Micaiah, son of Imlah." Jehoshaphat replied, "That's not the way a king should talk. Let's hear what he has to say." So the king of Israel called one of his officials and said, "Quick, bring Micaiah, son of Imlah." Yeah. So none of the other 400 prophets were prophets of the Lord, which means they were prophets of other gods. Jehoshaphat, being dedicated to the Lord specifically, wanted to make sure he heard from a prophet of the Lord, so he could get insight from the Lord on the situation. But the king of Israel, Ahab, not being dedicated to the Lord, of course the Lord's prophet would have a bunch of negative things to say about a king that doesn't follow the Lord. Like, that shouldn't really be a surprise. But King Ahab doesn't like him because of that fact. Kind of your own fault there, Ahab. So, they go to get Micaiah. Verse 9. King Ahab of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Judah, dressed in their royal robes, were sitting on thrones at the threshing floor near the gate of Samaria. All of Ahab's prophets were prophesying there in front of them. One of them, Zedekiah son of Kenana, made some iron horns and proclaimed, "This is what the Lord says. With these horns you will gore the Arameans to death." All the other prophets agreed. "Yes," they said, "go up to Ramoth Gilead and be victorious, for the Lord will give the king victory." So, just kind of giving a little more detail on the types of things that the other prophets, who weren't prophets of the Lord, said about the situation and whether they should attack Ramoth Gilead or go capture it. Okay, verse 12. Meanwhile, the messenger who went to get Micaiah said to him, "Look, all the prophets are promising victory for the king. Be sure that you agree with them and promise success." But Micaiah replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will say only what my God says." When Micaiah arrived before the king, Ahab asked him, "Micaiah, should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should I hold back?" Micaiah replied sarcastically, "Yes, go up and be victorious, for you will have victory over them." As if he's like mocking the other prophets. But the king replied sharply, "How many times must I demand that you speak only the truth to me when you speak for the Lord?" Then Micaiah told him, "In a vision I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains like sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, 'Their master has been killed. Send them home in peace.' Didn't I tell you," the king of Israel exclaimed to Jehoshaphat, "he never prophesies anything but trouble for me." Pausing there for a little bit. So, like, the messenger told Micaiah essentially what to say, but Micaiah's like, "I don't obey you. Well, I obey the Lord before I obey you. God's more important to me. I'm only going to say what God tells me to say. But perhaps because of that, he gets all snarky and sarcastic here, like, oh yeah, sure you're gonna win. Everybody else says you're gonna win. Why wouldn't you? But apparently, Ahab could tell he wasn't really being honest with that. So, demands the truth instead of sarcasm. And Micaiah, unsurprisingly, doesn't paint such a bright picture. I mean, saying Israel is scattered on the mountains and that their master has been killed, their master would be the king. Although, maybe it's using the word master here because it's saying they were like sheep without a shepherd. Kind of leaning more into that allegory a bit. Anyway. And there's a note there that says, these people have no master, rather than saying their master has been killed. But the implication pretty much was that their current master and king, Ahab, would die. Ahab obviously doesn't like that. And then we continue in verse 18. Then Micaiah continued, listen to what the Lord says. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne with all the armies of heaven around him, on his right and on his left. And the Lord said, who can entice King Ahab of Israel to go into battle against Ramoth-Gilead so he can be killed? There were many suggestions, and finally a spirit approached the Lord and said, I can do it. How will you do this? The Lord asked. And the spirit replied, I will go out and inspire all of Ahab's prophets to speak lies. You will succeed, the Lord said the Lord. Go ahead and do it. So you see, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouths of your prophets, for the Lord has pronounced your doom. You know what? Sure, I'll continue. Then Zedekiah, son of Kenana, walked up to Micaiah and slapped him across the face. Since when did the Spirit of the Lord leave me to speak to you? He demanded. And Micaiah replied, you will find out soon enough when you are trying to hide in some secret room. Arrest him, the king of Israel ordered. Take him back to Ammon, the governor of the city, and to my son Joash. Give them this order from the king. Put this man in prison and feed him nothing but bread and water until I return safely from the battle. But Micaiah replied, if you return safely, it will mean that the Lord has not spoken through me. Then he added to those standing around, everyone mark my words. Yeah, so now Micaiah is revealing a, cosmic plan. I don't know if cosmic is actually the best word, but is revealing actually a heavenly plan, a plan by the Lord to essentially make sure that King Ahab goes to battle and dies. Not surprising that the Lord would want King Ahab dead if Ahab doesn't worship the Lord. So there's a discussion around how to entice Ahab to fight. The spirit comes and says, I'll just make all of his prophets say that he'll succeed. And that's the plan, and that, according to Micaiah, is what happened, and why literally all of the other prophets are saying that he will succeed. But Zedekiah doesn't take too kindly to this. Zedekiah is the one who mentioned the horns and that Ahab would gore the Arameans to death with said horns. But just because Zedekiah fancies himself a prophet of the Lord, that doesn't mean he actually is. And that kind of thing, my friends, is an actual, concrete instance of taking the Lord's name in vain. Because he's invoking the name of the Lord here. Notice he says, "This is what the Lord says." So he's invoking the name of the Lord in a lie. He's using the Lord's name to try and be more convincing and further deceive King Ahab. Now, granted, he only did that because the Lord put a lying spirit in him and the other prophets. But anyway, the prophets and the king don't like what Micaiah said, so they're going to go lock him up. With his punishment being that he gets nothing but bread and water until the king returns safely. To which he's like, if you return safely, then God hasn't spoken through me. I firmly believe that the Lord told me you will die in this battle. So, if you return safely, I'm wrong. But he tells everyone to mark his words for when, King Ahab dies. Well, when/if, from that time perspective. Okay. On to verse 28. I don't think there were any other notes for me to look at. Okay. So King Ahab of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Judah led their armies against Ramoth-Gilead. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "As we go into battle, I will disguise myself so no one will recognize me, but you wear your royal robes." So the king of Israel disguised himself and they went into battle. So he's gonna make Jehoshaphat a more obvious target. That's a very cowardly approach if he's gonna try and, reduce the chance of himself getting killed, but not care about his supposed, brother, friend, comrade, whatever, Jehoshaphat. But, even in this, God was at work. Verse 30. Meanwhile, the king of Aram had issued these orders to his chariot commanders. "Attack only the king of Israel. Don't bother with anyone else." So when the Aramean chariot commanders saw Jehoshaphat in his royal robes, they went after him. "There's the king of Israel," they shouted. But Jehoshaphat called out, and the Lord saved him. God helped him by turning the attackers away from him. As soon as the chariot commanders realized he was not the king of Israel, they stopped chasing him. So, they could tell he was a king. Duh, he was wearing his royal robes. So they thought he was the king of Israel. They didn't see any other king leading an army of Israelites. So they assumed it was Jehoshaphat. But upon closer inspection, they're like, no, wait, this is not the right king. And since they were ordered specifically to attack the king of Israel, they then stop attacking Jehoshaphat. And then, verse 33, an Aramean soldier, however, randomly shot an arrow at the Israelite troops and hit the king of Israel between the joints of his armor. "Turn the horses and get me out of here," Ahab groaned to the driver of the chariot. "I'm badly wounded." The battle raged all that day, and the king of Israel propped himself up in his chariot facing the Arameans. In the evening, just as the sun was setting, he died. So, Ahab dies anyway. despite his attempts to disguise himself. Turns out Micaiah was right. Ahab dies in the battle. What a surprise. I say that a bit sarcastically, obviously. Hebrew there says turn your hand instead of turn the horses, but he said that to the driver of the chariot. The driver turning his hand would, by nature, turn the horses then. But I guess he wanted to get away from the battle since he was badly wounded. A, they would maybe be able to treat him slightly better. And B, they, there would be a far better chance of him not getting hurt again on top of all that. Also, maybe his troops wouldn't see his condition. But, yeah. So, Jehoshaphat is spared. He even calls out to the Lord in the midst of this. I don't know if it's really a full-on... It says they went into battle, but it's like they were only focused on the king of Israel. So it's more like almost more of an assassination mission, just like a very large-scale effort for an assassination. I mean, obviously they would fight whoever got in the way of them trying to get to the king of Israel, because those troops would want to stop them, but if they want to succeed in their mission, they got to fight off the troops who are trying to stop them from getting to the king of Israel. So, because of that, I guess it was still kind of a battle in a way. But yeah. So Ahab gets hit with an arrow in a gap in his armor and pretty much bleeds out and dies. There might have been damage to some vital organs. It doesn't really describe that in detail. But in any case, yeah. Despite his efforts to disguise himself, he dies in battle. And thus ends 2 Chronicles chapter 18. Okay, so I just actually pieced together an interesting possibility here. Now, back in the previous chapter, it mentions one of the officials Jehoshaphat sends out is named Micaiah. One of the ones he sent to, teach the people about the law. And now this prophet that King Ahab doesn't like, that's a prophet of the Lord, is also named Micaiah. It didn't say the previous one was son of Imlah. It's totally possible it's a different Micaiah. But it would be interesting if it was the same one, in my opinion. Because then it's almost like what he says would kind of be Jehoshaphat hearing from his own official. Then again, if it really was, maybe Jehoshaphat would have given it more weight. I don't know. Anyway, so, yeah. Jehoshaphat's fine, but King Ahab dies because he doesn't listen to Micaiah's advice and decides to engage in this attack at Ramoth Gilead. And it presumably doesn't work. He definitely dies anyway, just like Micaiah said. Jehoshaphat's fine, though. Anyway, so that's all we get in this chapter. As always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description for links to social media pages, as well as my Discord server and my supporter page. If you want to connect, all the different ways to find my content, connect, engage, all that good stuff. down there in the description. And of course, if you want to engage right here, just go down below and leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section. So that's it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.